At the wedding, she walked down the aisle on my best friend's arm, exchanging vows under a cascade of blessings while I stood in the back and watched. I didn't make a scene. I just turned and walked away. 15 years of devotion, all for her to tell me, you'll never be him. That night, I scheduled the surgery to reverse my vasectomy, a final, clean break from the life I thought we'd have. The night wind howled, whipping the bonfire at the historic mountain lodge into a frenzy of red and orange. The sound of celebration echoed through the valley, the urgent beat of a drum, the soaring notes of a violin. String lights glittered, casting the entire estate in a glow as bright as day. I stood at the edge of the crowd, a hand squeezing my heart into a tight, painful knot. Before me, the bride was a vision in a stunning white gown, a delicate veil framing her gentle smile. Her name was Dr. Evelyn Reed, my wife, the woman I had chased for 15 years. But the arm she was holding wasn't mine. It belonged to David Marsh, my best friend, the one that got away. Her one true love. The crowd erupted in cheers, their applause like thunder. They exchanged vows. They exchanged rings. They kissed. I saw the tenderness in Evelyn's eyes, a look she had never once given me. Her smile was one of pure contentment, of unadulterated happiness. I heard her whisper to him, "The vows you mean in your heart are the only ones that count." David looked weak, but his face was alight with joy. The cancer had wasted his body, but he stood tall, his back straight. "Evelyn," he said, his voice raspy, "with you it was all worth it." More applause, more blessings rained down on them. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. The pain was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the chasm cracking open in my chest. She and I had a marriage license. We'd gone to the courthouse months ago. Legally, she was my wife. But in her eyes, I had never truly been her husband. I swallowed the bitter, metallic taste in my mouth. From 15 to 30. For 15 years, I had poured every ounce of my being into chasing her, protecting her, content to be the shadow at her side. Whenever she needed someone, I was always the first to appear. She was distant, and I remained devoted. But now, finally, I saw the truth. I was never her choice. Not then, not ever. "A toast to the happy couple," the officiant called out. Evelyn and David raised their champagne flutes, their arms linked. Under the starry sky, they smiled, touched their glasses, and drank. The embers of the bonfire danced in the wind, illuminating the bliss on her face. In that instant, something inside me died. Truly and completely. I didn't rush the altar. I didn't scream. The last shred of my dignity wouldn't allow it. I just turned away, pulled out my phone, and calmly scheduled an appointment for a vasectomy reversal. 15 years was enough, I told myself. From now on, I had to sever every last tie. "So what if you have a marriage license, Leo?" A cold voice whispered in my ear. Her heart was never yours. A ghost of a smile touched my lips, but it was more painful than a sob. After the toast, they walked hand in hand toward the bridal suite. The crowd laughed and cheered. Fireworks lit up the sky. But I was pushed to the edge, left standing outside the door as it closed, shutting me out of their world for good. David Marsh had won his bride. I had lost 15 years of my life to a delusion. Someone behind me whispered, "The groom is David Marsh, but isn't that Evelyn's husband, Leo Vance, standing over there? I heard they got a license ages ago. God, what a mess." Well, you can't blame her. A woman wants true love. A piece of paper doesn't mean anything. I heard every word, but I didn't have the strength to turn around. My insides felt terrifyingly empty, yet my feet were steady as I walked toward the exit of the estate. The night sky was a blanket of bright, indifferent stars. I stopped and took one last look at the suite, its windows glowing with candlelight. I whispered 8 words into the wind. "You chose him. Now, don't blame me." Then I turned my back and walked away. The wind howled, and the sounds of celebration faded behind me. In that moment, I finally understood. My 15 years had been a complete and utter joke. The night air was cold enough to cut. I walked down the mountain road, the light and noise of the party dissolving behind me. My steps had never felt so certain. After 15 years, I was finally letting go. The house was clean and quiet when I got back. On my desk was a framed photo from our courthouse wedding. Her expression was neutral, while I was smiling like a fool who just won the lottery. I picked it up, staring at it for a long time. Then I let my fingers go slack. The frame hit the floor and shattered, the sound echoing through the empty living room. The photo was torn in two. I sat down quietly and waited for her. At midnight, the door opened. She had changed out of her wedding dress and into a simple white coat. Traces of makeup still clung to her face. Her eyes held a mixture of joy and exhaustion, but not a hint of guilt. She saw me and froze for a second. Then her expression soured with annoyance. What are you still doing here? I looked at her, my heart a dead, silent thing. You exchanged vows with him. I did, she said, her tone unapologetic, almost proud. So, I let out a low, humorless laugh. Evelyn, I just have to know, was I ever in your heart at all? She frowned, irritated by the question. Leo, don't be so dramatic. Her voice was cold. I've told you so many times. You could never compare to David. He was always the one. Every word was a knife. I stared at her, feeling like I was seeing her for the first time. 15 years of companionship, dismissed so easily. So you never, not for a second, considered me your husband? She scoffed. Husband? What does a piece of paper from the courthouse mean? You could never give me what I wanted. The air left my lungs. Then, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. I had been on the wrong path from the very beginning. I slowly pulled out the documents I had prepared. Divorce papers. She flinched. You? I pushed a pen into her hand. Sign it. She stared at me, as if trying to gauge if I was serious. My face was calm, without a trace of hesitation. She let out a cold laugh and signed her name with a few quick, angry strokes. The motion was as dismissive as if she were throwing away trash. It's about time, she said, tossing the pen back on the table, her eyes filled with contempt. Leo, you finally made a smart decision. I didn't say anything. I just retrieved a wooden box from a drawer and placed it in front of her. She opened it, her brow furrowed in confusion. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a neat stack of ancient manuscripts, their pages yellowed, the ink faded with time. She froze, her pupils trembling slightly. These are the original Latin manuscripts you needed for your research, I said, my voice flat. It took me 10 years to track them all down. Weren't you the one who said your thesis would never be complete without them? She stared at the manuscripts, her fingers shaking, but she forced herself to look up, her expression defiant. Why are you giving these to me? I looked at her, my smile as cold as ice. Consider it a farewell gift. She stood there, speechless. A flicker of something, doubt, regret, crossed her face, but she quickly suppressed it. Leo, you really are a joke, she sneered. Divorcing me and still paving the way for my career. I stare back at her, my gaze glacial. The joke is on me, not you. I was the one willing to play the fool. I stood up and grabbed my coat. Evelyn, after tonight, we are completely finished. She was silent for a few seconds, then said coldly, Are you sure you can just let me go? I didn't turn back. 15 years was enough. From now on, your world with David Marsh has nothing to do with me. I closed the door behind me. The heavy thud echoed in the room, leaving her stunned and alone. She glanced at the divorce papers on the table, then down at the stack of priceless manuscripts. Her expression grew complicated. As I walked into the night, my mind felt clearer than it had in years. I didn't look back. I would never look back again. Back at my rental, I made a call. U.S. Antarctic Geological Survey. How can I help you? I'd like to join the program. The conditions are extremely harsh, sir. Are you sure? My voice was firm. I'm sure. There was a pause on the other end of the line before they agreed to schedule an interview. I hung up, leaned back against the headboard, and let out a long, slow breath. For the first time, I felt a sense of relief. Outside, the wind howled through the silent night. At the same time, miles away, Evelyn Reed tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She couldn't understand why, but in her mind, she kept seeing the wooden box, the ancient manuscripts, and the image of my back as I walked away, forever. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, and I was already awake. The signed divorce papers sat on the table, the black ink a cold, sharp reminder. I folded the document carefully and put it in a briefcase. Today, I was ending this marriage. 15 years of my life, finally coming to a close. I walked into the county clerk's office. The hall was mostly empty, save for a few young couples waiting in line. Some were smiling, others were crying. Only Evelyn and I were as cold as two statues. She wore a gray trench coat, her face bare of makeup, her eyes distant. We sat on a red plastic bench until our number was called. Divorces, over here, a clerk droned. She stood up first, her stride quick and purposeful. I followed close behind. At the counter, the clerk handed us the forms. Are you both confirming this is voluntary? Evelyn didn't even look up. It is. Her voice was devoid of any warmth. I signed my name. My hand trembled slightly, but I didn't pause. As of today, you are no longer married. At that moment, a weight lifted from my chest. It felt as if a stone I'd been carrying for 15 years had finally been set down. But after it was gone, all that remained was emptiness. Evelyn took her copy of the decree, her expression unchanged, as if she'd just finished a minor errand. She turned to leave without a second glance in my direction. I followed her out of the building, but kept my distance. Outside, she suddenly stopped. "You really don't regret this at all?" she asked abruptly. I looked at her, my gaze calm. "I do." She froze. I continued. "I regret wasting 15 years of my life on you." Her eyes widened, and her face instantly darkened. But I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked away. The wind rustled the divorce decree in my pocket, the sound of final, faint whisper of the tie that once bound us. It was completely over. That evening, Evelyn returned home. The living room was empty. All of my things were gone. The only thing left on the table was the wooden box. She hesitated before opening it. The ancient manuscripts lay inside, silent and heavy with the scent of time. She reached out, her fingertips lightly brushing across the yellowed pages. Her throat felt tight. For the first time, a flicker of panic crossed her face. "Why would you leave this for me?" she murmured to herself, but there was no answer. This collection of manuscripts was the holy grail of her field. Without it, her research would stall indefinitely. She had complained countless times that no one understood her academic passion. And now, the very text she dreamed of had been found for her, a decade-long labor of love, left as a parting gift. A divorce gift. She tried to smile, but her lips felt stiff. An unfamiliar ache began to spread through her chest. That night, she tried to read the manuscripts, but her mind was elsewhere. Page after page turned under her fingers, the ancient script a blur. She suddenly remembered all the times I had gone with her to rare book fairs. Every casual wish she'd ever mentioned, I had remembered, but she had never truly paid me any attention. Her focus wavered, her throat dry. The heavy volume nearly slipped from her hands, and she clutched it tightly. A strange, hollow feeling began to grow inside her. A few days later, David Marsh moved in with her. His health was deteriorating, and his temper grew worse with each passing day. He coughed constantly and complained endlessly. "Evelyn, are you even trying to take care of me? This medicine is disgusting. Can't you find something better? If you hadn't married the wrong man in the first place, I wouldn't have had to wait so long to have you." His words were sharp, and they left her speechless. A deep frustration simmered inside her, but she didn't dare show it. She had no way out. She had chosen David. No matter how hard it got, she had to see it through. But late at night, she would find her thoughts drifting back to the stack of manuscripts, to the coldness in my eyes, to the last thing I ever said to her. "I only regret wasting 15 years on you." That sentence was a razor-sharp blade, cutting into her heart again and again. For the first time, she began to wonder, had she really won? Meanwhile, I was preparing for my interview. My bags were packed. I picked up a pen and wrote one last letter. My handwriting was steady, but the words were final. "Evelyn, from this day forward, I am cutting all ties with the past. The cold of Antarctica cannot compare to the cold you showed me. This is the last letter I will ever write. After this, I am gone." The envelope lay on the table, swaying slightly in the breeze. I turned off the lights and walked out the door. The darkness swallowed me whole. From now on, I no longer belonged to her world. After the divorce was finalized, my life became quieter than it had been in years. No more arguments. No more waiting. No more illusions. I left the last letter on the table and mailed it to Evelyn, along with a copy of the divorce decree. That was the last piece of contact we would ever have. As I packed, I looked at the empty closet and felt not a single shred of attachment. 15 years of love had finally reached their end. I shouldered my duffel bag and set off for the interview. The offices of the U.S. Antarctic Geological Survey were stark and serious. The walls were adorned with photographs of ice and snow, the most desolate and purest place on Earth. The interviewer was an old professor with a white beard. He looked me up and down and got straight to the point. "Leo, we need people who can endure hardship and profound isolation. Antarctica is an extreme environment. We're talking temperatures of 50 below, 6 months of darkness. Are you sure you want this?" I nodded. "I'm sure." He raised an eyebrow. "You can leave your family and life behind." My gaze was unwavering. "I no longer have a family." He was silent for a moment, a look of understanding in his eyes. "All right, you ship out with the team next week." On the day I left, I didn't tell anyone. There was no one to tell. As the plane took off and climbed through the thick clouds, I looked out the window and felt a sense of relief I had never known. Away from all the noise, away from the old dreams. This was a new beginning. When I arrived at the Antarctic base, the wind was a roaring gale. The sky was a flat gray, and the ground was an endless expanse of ice. The cold cut at my face like a knife. But every breath I took felt freer than any I had taken in my marriage. Life at the research station was grueling. Every day was either drilling or collecting samples. During the 40-below nights, we huddled together for warmth. Some team members complained. Some wanted to quit, but I felt a deep sense of purpose. This coal was honest. It held no malice, no betrayal. It was cleaner than the cold Evelyn had shown me. The other researchers quickly took notice of me. I never complained about being tired. Whether drilling through ice sheets or hauling heavy equipment, I gritted my teeth and pushed on. Gradually, they started to look at me with respect. One of them clapped me on the shoulder and laughed. "Leo, you're tougher than you look." I just gave a small smile. They had no idea that this physical hardship was nothing compared to a broken heart. A month later, our first set of samples yielded results. Our drilling project had uncovered a rare layer of glacial sediment. The old professor's eyes lit up, and he praised my data analysis repeatedly. "You're not just tough, Leo. Your academic skills are solid. Antarctica needs people like you." Something stirred inside me. It turned out I could be valued, not for chasing after someone, but for my own inherent worth. At the same time, thousands of miles away, Evelyn was sitting at her desk. Spread before her was the last letter I'd sent. She read the line, "The cold of Antarctica cannot compare to the cold you showed me." She stared at it for a long time, and a tear fell silently onto the page. That night, her hair began to turn gray at the temples. Her colleagues were shocked to see that the once proud, aloof professor seemed to have aged years overnight. She tried to carry on with her research, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. A colleague asked with concern, "Reed, are you all right?" She shook her head, forcing a calm expression. "I'm fine." But no one knew that the image haunting her was the sight of my back as I walked away. The Antarctic night lasts for months. Under the pitch-black sky, we could sometimes see the aurora borealis. I stood on the ice sheet, watching the magnificent curtain of light. A thought suddenly came to me. So this is what freedom feels like? I smiled softly, and the white puff of my breath instantly froze in the air. No one here knew my past. No one would ever mention Evelyn Reed again. I finally belonged to myself. But I didn't know that while I was pouring everything I had in my research, Evelyn was staring at the stack of ancient manuscripts, night after sleepless night. She thought the divorce would bring her true happiness. Instead, all she got was the resentment of a dying man and the complete and total loss of me. And I was already on a path of ice and snow, far beyond where anyone could follow. The news broadcast brought a lot of attention, but in Antarctica, I felt none of it. Here, there was only the howling wind and the endless work. I turned down all interview requests and refused any media follow-ups. I knew that applause and discussion had nothing to do with me. All I needed was this peace. A new researcher joined our team, a young, energetic woman with a constant, bright smile. Her name was Chloe. She often came over to help me with my equipment or hand me a thermos of hot water. "Vance, you were too hard. It's freezing out here, but you can stand for hours." I would just shake my head with a faint smile. I'm used to it. There was a light in her eyes, but it couldn't penetrate the darkness in my heart. I knew her affection was genuine, but that place inside me was already a wasteland. I gently rejected her warmth. "Chloe, don't waste your time on me. You'll meet someone much better." She froze, her eyes welling up, but she didn't press the issue. After that, she remained polite, but the initial warmth was gone. I saw it, but felt nothing. My heart was buried under ice. Meanwhile, back in the States, Evelyn's life was becoming more difficult by the day. David's condition worsened, and he grew extremely volatile. He flew into rages at the slightest provocation, blaming her for all his misfortunes. "If you hadn't wasted all those years with Leo, my cancer would have been treated sooner. Why aren't you taking better care of me? Are you still thinking about him?" Evelyn suppressed her emotions, whispering, "David, I'm not." But she knew, even as she said it, that it was a lie. Late at night, she couldn't stop herself from opening her laptop and searching for news about Leo Vance Antarctica. The photos that appeared made her chest ache. There he was, standing on the ice sheet, his silhouette resolute. She had never seen him look like that. The Leo she knew had always orbited her, small and unassuming. Now, he was a source of pride for others. She suddenly realized she had never really known him at all. Her own research had hit a wall. Her paper was stalled at a critical point, and no matter what she did, she couldn't find a breakthrough. Then one day, she opened her divorce gift again. The rare collection of manuscripts, one of only a few copies in the world. She caressed the yellowed pages, her vision blurring with tears. She finally understood that without Leo, she wouldn't have even gotten this far. But now, that man was gone from her life forever. Regret washed over her like a tidal wave. One weekend, she attended an academic conference. During a casual chat, A colleague brought it up. I heard your ex-husband made a huge breakthrough in Antarctica. I never knew he was so brilliant. Professor Reed, you certainly have unique taste, letting a man like that go. The words were framed as a joke, but each one felt like a dagger. Evelyn's face went pale. She forced a smile and mumbled a few dismissive words, but her heart felt like it was being ripped apart. When David heard the rumors, he became even more furious. Evelyn, you regret it, don't you? You want to leave me and go find him. Is that it? His eyes were wild, like those of a sick, cornered animal. Evelyn wiped her tears and shook her head. No, I'm just tired. But the more she denied it, the more she knew the truth. She did regret it, but it was too late. Back at the research station, I was on the verge of another breakthrough. Our team discovered a deposit of a new type of mineral. The news sent shockwaves through the scientific community back home. Someone said, Leo Vance. That name is going to be in textbooks. I remained silent. Joy? No. Pride? None of that either. I was simply more certain than ever that I was on a one-way path. The solitude of Antarctica was a mirror, reflecting my own heart back at me, stripped bare. Late at night, when the others were asleep, I would walk out onto the ice. The wind howled across the endless, empty landscape. I realized that the desolation here was more real than my marriage had ever been. At least here, there were no lies, no betrayals. I spread my arms, letting the snow whip against my face, and whispered to myself, Leo Vance, you're finally free. But this freedom was a lonely one. So lonely that no one could ever enter my heart again. Even if someone reached out a hand, I wouldn't take it, because I knew that the part of me capable of love was already dead. It had died that night at a wedding in the mountains. And thousands of miles away, Evelyn sat in the dark, hugging her knees. Her hair was now streaked with white. Tears soaked the collar of her shirt. She whispered his name into the darkness. Leo, why won't you even look back at me once? But she didn't know that my gaze was already fixed on a place no one could reach. She didn't know that our story had reached its irreversible end. The lights of the International Conference Hall were blinding. I stood at the podium in a simple dark suit. Behind me, a large screen displayed research data, satellite images of the ice shelf, and a presentation of our latest findings. I raised the microphone, my voice calm and clear. This is a new mineral sample our team discovered in the Antarctic interior. Its composition has the potential to reshape the energy sector for the next decade. The hall fell silent, then erupted in thunderous applause. Camera flashes strobed across the room. I remained unmoved, continuing my presentation with detached professionalism. After the speech, 4 media outlets swarmed to report on it. The headlines were sensational. Leo Vance, the rise of a new star in science. From obscurity to glory, the man at the end of the world. Within days, my name was on international science watch lists. The media back home amplified the story. Suddenly, Leo Vance became a symbol. At the same time, in a university office building, Evelyn sat staring at her phone. On the screen was a video of me giving my speech. Her finger trembled as tears dripped onto the glass. The man she was watching felt like a stranger, terrifyingly distant and painfully brilliant. Her colleagues walked in and saw her. They started whispering, "Did you see the news? That's her ex-husband. Why did they ever get divorced? She traded a diamond for a rock. Well, look at it now. He's a national hero, and she's stuck with that dying invalid." Evelyn's face was a mask of stone. She tried to pretend she couldn't hear, but their words were like arrows piercing her heart. She couldn't take it anymore and fled the office. That night, she returned home to find David slumped on the sofa, his sick face contorted with resentment. "What are you crying about?" he rasped. "You're crying for him, aren't you?" Evelyn flinched and turned her back to him, unable to answer. David let out a cold, rattling laugh. "You think I don't know? You must be regretting it now. Too bad. He'll never want you back." Evelyn's chest tightened. Her voice was barely a whisper. "David, please stop." But the tears fell uncontrollably. Meanwhile, at the research station, I watched the storm of media coverage from afar. My teammates were ecstatic. "Leo, you're famous. This is historic." I just nodded, not even smiling. I knew this glory was fleeting. Nothing could change the fact that my heart had already died once. Nothing had made that clearer than the wedding in the mountains. But I didn't know that a different kind of storm was brewing back home. More and more people were digging into my past. Someone unearthed an old local news blurb. Local man betrayed by wife on eve of wedding ceremony. Ex-wife chooses old flame over husband. The tide of public opinion turned viciously against Evelyn. She must be blind, letting a man like that go. She doesn't deserve him. I bet she regrets it now. Too late. These comments, like invisible swords, shredded Evelyn's reputation. Her academic achievements were ignored. Her students whispered about her in class. One even had the audacity to ask her directly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Professor, what do you think of your ex-husband now? He's a real hero, isn't he?" Evelyn forced a smile, her throat so tight she couldn't form a complete sentence. When the bell rang, she practically ran from the classroom. Late that night, she finally broke down and dialed the number that had long been disconnected. A cold, automated voice answered. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Her hand shook, and the phone clattered to the floor. She sank to her knees on the cold tile, her hands covering her head as sobs racked her body. She finally understood. That man had truly, completely, and irrevocably erased her from his life. A few days later, she gathered the courage to write a long email and send it to the research station's public address. "Leo, I was wrong. For 15 years, you were so good to me and I never saw it. It was only after I lost you that I realized you were the only person I could ever truly rely on. Please, I'm begging you, just write back." But the email never received a reply. The station's inbox had a strict filtering system. Any messages unrelated to research were automatically blocked. Her confession of regret vanished into the digital void. When David found out, he laughed maniacally. "Huh, see, you want to find him? He won't even give you the time of day. Evelyn Reed, for the rest of your life, you're stuck with me, a dying man." Evelyn collapsed on the floor, tears streaming down her face. She felt trapped in a cage with no exit, a cage built of regret and despair. And I, under the vast Antarctic night sky, gazed at the endless stars. My teammates were celebrating, but I walked out alone into the snow. I knew my comeback was complete. The man who was once unseen and uncherished was now standing on the world stage. And she, the woman I had loved for 15 years, was being slowly torn apart by the reality she had created. I took a deep breath of the freezing air and whispered to myself, the sharpest revenge isn't an argument or retaliation. It's living a life that you can no longer dream of reaching. The howling wind swallowed my words. The winter night in Antarctica was filled with the roar of a beast. Just after midnight, the station's alarms blared to life. Blizzard approaching. All personnel to level 1 defensive positions. My eyes snapped open, and I swung myself out of my bunk. My heavy boots hit the cold metal floor with a dull thud. This was the first storm of this magnitude I had faced since arriving. The wind speed exceeded 100 miles per hour, and pellets of ice hammered against the shelter. The supply tunnel was completely buried. If we couldn't reach the backup depot, the 30-plus people in this station would face starvation and freezing to death. In the emergency briefing room, the mood was tense. The team leader's voice was grim. "We have to send a team to the old depot 3 kilometers away to retrieve supplies. But the journey is extremely dangerous." No one spoke. Everyone knew it was a suicide mission, a walk into the blizzard's teeth. I stood up. "I'll go." The leader frowned. "Leo, you're a core researcher." I cut him off. "That's exactly why I have to go. I can't let everyone die here. Our research is only valuable if someone is alive to continue it." The air in the room grew thick. Then a few other team members stood up. "We'll go with you." In the storm, a dozen headlamps flickered against the darkness. The ice was as smooth as glass. Every step felt like dicing with death. Our breath froze instantly inside our masks, and our fingers went numb inside our gloves. We pushed forward. Halfway there, the blizzard intensified. Visibility dropped to near zero. Suddenly, there was a loud crack beneath my feet. The ice was splitting. "Watch out!" I yelled instinctively. The next second, I was falling. The impact knocked the wind out of me. I plunged into a crevasse, and icy snow poured into my collar, slicing at my skin like razors. I forced my eyes open, my headlamp flickering wildly. I was surrounded by sharp ice walls, with nothing but darkness below. I could hear my teammates' desperate cries through my headset. "Leo, grab the rope." I looked up and saw their beams dancing frantically. A rescue line snaked its way down. I reached for it, but a searing pain shot through my left leg. I couldn't move it. Blood was already staining the snow. My consciousness began to fade. In that moment, I felt strangely calm. The ice was merciless, ready to swallow me whole. But Evelyn's face didn't flash before my eyes. There was no resentment. What I saw was myself as a teenager, holding a geology hammer for the first time. I remembered my father's words. A real man invests his life in something that leaves value behind. I smiled softly. So this is it. My life is finally my own. My eyelids grew heavy. Darkness closed in. Thousands of miles away, in a city at night, Evelyn tossed and turned, a heavy feeling crushing her chest. Her hand shook so badly, she couldn't hold a glass of water. A news bulletin interrupted the program on her television. Antarctic research station hit by massive blizzard. Status of personnel unknown. She shot upright, her eyes glued to the screen. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling as she searched for more information. A news alert popped up. Leo Vance, core member of research team, reported missing during supply mission. Situation is critical. An explosion went off in her head. Her heart felt like it had been struck with a sledgehammer. A chill spread through her entire body. The phone slipped from her grasp. She collapsed to the floor, her vision blurred by tears. In that instant, she finally understood what it meant to lose someone. It wasn't about having a chance to win them back. It was the possibility that they would never come back at all. She pounded the floor, her voice a raw, desperate cry. God, please save him. As long as he lives, I don't care if he never forgives me. I'll accept it. David staggered out of the bedroom, his face pale, a cruel smile on his lips. Huh, so now you're scared. Evelyn, you will never get another chance. He coughed, blood flecking his lips. You finally realize he's the real man, don't you? Too bad he's going to die. Die somewhere you'll never even see. Evelyn trembled uncontrollably. She lunged at him, grabbing his shirt, her voice cracking as she screamed. Shut up. Just shut up. But inside, her world had completely fallen apart. Back in Antarctica, the blizzard continued to rage. I was dangling from the rescue rope, my body temperature dropping fast. Through the headset, my teammates were